The moment I realized I was an idiot. Epic dating blunders. History 1. One year, while I was around 16 years old, I was on a plane trip returning from a holiday. I headed to the front section of the aircraft to use the lavatory. As I was making my way back to my seat, this young woman handed me a slip of paper and asserted, "You dropped this." I was absolutely certain that I hadn't carried any paper in my pocket previously, so I gently replied, "No, I didn't, but thank you." "Yes, you did. You dropped this," she stated resolutely. At this juncture, I was annoyed that this girl clearly didn't grasp that I was more cognizant of my pocket's contents than she was, so I informed her yet again in front of progressively perplexed travelers that I had not dropped any paper. Her mother, I presume, chuckled, and the unfortunate girl, thoroughly frustrated by this point, exclaimed, "Just take the paper." So I responded, "Fine," and I went back to my seat where my parents giggled at me as I unfolded the paper with her phone number written on it and understood I was the most unintelligent individual I would ever encounter. History 2. I often found myself engaging in lighthearted banter with one of the female bartenders at my workplace. It was truly a lot of fun, and there were many hints that something more might be happening. The most unmistakable cue, one I absolutely should have recognized and acted on, came when we finished our shifts around 4 a.m. I tried to give her a playful tickle, and she didn't react. Then she stated, "I'm only ticklish in one specific place." She then gently touched her inner thighs, close to her personal region. It was, in essence, her way of inviting me to continue and tickle her. I chuckled and replied, "Oh, now I know how to annoy you with tickles. I'll catch you on our next shift." I drove myself home. As I was heading back, it suddenly dawned on me what had truly unfolded. She clearly didn't like being turned down, and that chance vanished forever. Oh. History 3. I used to enjoy playful exchanges with one of the women tending bar at a place where I was employed. It was quite amusing, and there were numerous indicators of her interest. The most obvious signal, which I clearly missed, occurred when we finished our shifts around 4 a.m. I attempted to tickle her, and she showed no reaction. Then she remarked, "I'm only ticklish in one area." She then started to gently rub her inner thighs, close to her private region. Essentially, she was indicating her consent for me to proceed and tickle her. I chuckled and responded, "Oh, now I understand how to pester you with tickles. I'll catch you on our next workday." I drove back to my residence. On my journey home, I suddenly grasped what had just unfolded. She didn't appreciate my rejection, and that opportunity vanished permanently. Oh. History 4. During my freshman year of high school, I was hanging out with a really attractive girl and a friend of mine. We decided to go back to her place since no one else was home. After a little while, my friend mentioned he had to head home and then left. The hot girl and I were sitting on the couch watching some lame show on TV. She turned to me and asked, "Want to see my new swimsuit?" I was absolutely certain she meant she'd go get it, bring it back, and hold it up for me to see. That didn't sound very exciting to me, so I politely said, "No thanks." A bit later, I left. It took me about 5 years to fully grasp what had actually happened. On another occasion, I was 22 years old and playing on a recreational sports team. I usually drove this one girl from our team home after games. During one of these drives, I mentioned that my hands were cold as it was winter. She remarked, "When my hands are cold, I usually put them between my legs. It's always warm down there." I pondered this for a moment and concluded that my pants were too thick to effectively warm my hands. "I'll just put on some gloves, I guess," I replied. I didn't think anything of it for several years. A couple of weeks later, she tried again, asking, "Do you have a girlfriend?" "Nope," I responded. "I can help you with that," she chimed in. She finally got through to me that time. History 5. My closest friend and I were chatting on the phone. We devoted a few hours that day to discussing things that excited us, along with her assortment of items for personal pleasure. One particular turn-on for her was the aroma of cooking garlic. She then informed me she was preparing something that contained garlic. She consumed whatever it is, making delightful sounds while we're still conversing. Subsequently, she mentioned she was going to disrobe and take a shower. She made a point of telling me she was leaving the main entrance unlatched. I simply replied, "Okay, talk to you later," and ended the call. History 6. During the initial weekend of my study abroad program, I was experiencing one of the greatest nights of my life. A girl from the program and I were strolling around, hoping to grab just one more beer before calling it a night. As we walked down a peaceful side street, she began discussing my height, a subject I'm quite accustomed to. She then admitted, "I've never kissed anyone as tall as you." My immediate reply was, I guess neither have I." It wasn't until a fortnight later, when we embarked on a weekend excursion together, that I became aware she harbored any sort of romantic interest in me. That turned out to be a rather uncomfortable trip. History 7. My study partner and I were taking anatomy and biology courses in college. We frequently reviewed material together. I happened to mention that I had an inguinal hernia, for which I was scheduled to have surgery in a few weeks. She inquired if she could see it. I clarified that it was located right down beside my lower abdominal region. She said she didn't care and was intrigued to observe its appearance and feel. I unfastened my pants and moved my underwear aside sufficiently for her to get a view. She then reached in and gently held that area and had me cough so she could perceive the effect. She examined around my lower body, feeling the hernia. Throughout this entire time, I was intensely focusing on unrelated matters, assuming her interest stemmed from a professional curiosity. Okay, you might be thinking, she could have simply been genuinely inquisitive and desired nothing further. However, she then asked if my condition improved or worsened during certain intimate activities. I responded that I hadn't been fortunate enough to have both my hernia and a girlfriend at the same time. She replied that I didn't require a girlfriend, just the appropriate girl, all while gently holding my scrotum. I gazed at her, rebuttoned my pants, and uttered something about wishing I could locate such a person. As it later became apparent, she had engaged in sexual activity with nearly every willing male in the class, and a few of them subsequently contracted a sexually transmitted infection. So, as unaware as I was, I narrowly avoided a serious problem. History 8. A girl I was infatuated with at the time and I were at my cabin by ourselves for an evening. All of our friends were due to arrive the following day. When we first got there, she declared, "I'm claiming that bed." And I responded, "But that's my bed." She then jokingly retorted, "Well then, I guess we're sleeping together." True to her word, she tossed her pillow onto my bed and lay down. I then settled in beside her, facing away from her. I was extremely awkward and ill at ease with the entire situation. I could hear her shifting and rustling, and then I twitched my leg a bit and made contact with her leg. She had moved very close to me. I immediately apologized and scooted closer to the edge of the bed. I felt as though she was just teasing me because she was aware of my feelings for her. My crush with her shapely figure, oh my God, yes, brown hair and eyes, I had a clear view of her form, hands between her thighs. I pointed out she had her hands between her thighs, said I do the same to warm my hands. She laughs and replies, "Oh, well, yeah, it is nice and warm down there." After that, she smiles with a very luring gaze in her big brown eyes closed halfway. She then subtly adjusts her position and she even bites her lip. My heart is reaching infinity with the number of beats, and I am so turned on, I'm forcing myself not to rip off everything and unleash my overwhelming urge to be physically close to her, as if my life depended on it. In doing so, it feels as if my soul is leaving my body, or in other words, I'm nearly fainting. So before turning to stone, I look away and take a deep breath. She notices and takes her hand away in embarrassment and tells me she needs to do homework now. On the way home, the words, "God damn it," is shouting in my head, and I kick the ground on the way home. All because I am so afraid of being gullible. Roughly 3 years later, she informed me that she had sort of wanted to fool around with me, but assumed I wasn't interested. Damn my luck. But she didn't. History 9. We were at my place, cramming for an organic chemistry exam. Both of us were seated close together at the table, my laptop positioned in front of us. I was explaining the mechanisms and various concepts to her, and she would lean against me, resting her head on my shoulder. As I continued to ramble on, she wrapped her arms around mine. I was convinced I was firmly in the friend zone, which is why I didn't give it much thought. We took a brief intermission to watch a movie, and she proposed we cuddle on the couch. I'm so deeply entrenched in the friend zone that she feels comfortable spooning with me, I mused to myself. She likely became exasperated that I wasn't catching on to her signals, so unexpectedly, she spun around and began passionately kissing me. We've been a couple for 2 years now. History 10. I attended a party and was really connecting with a girl I knew from various social circles. She was charming and incredibly enjoyable, but I had to depart after a few hours. The party was held in a friend's apartment within the same building where I resided at the time. She was following me out, stating she also needed to leave. We both summoned the elevator, and the lighthearted conversation and flirting continued inside the lift. I reached my floor, and she then claimed she might have left her jacket at my apartment. At this point, I didn't grasp what was happening, so I informed her that she had never actually been to my apartment. I only fully understood what in the world had transpired after the elevator doors had closed. Edit 1. Wow, this gained far more attention than I anticipated, and it originated from the period when I inadvertently sabotaged my own romantic opportunity. And for those who are inquiring, yes, I'm a bit oblivious when it comes to any type of relationships or social indicators. I endeavor to make an effort, but because I relocated frequently during my upbringing, I never truly learned to recognize social cues until I reached college, which still makes dating a tad complicated in my life. Yay! History 11. I threw a party while my parents were away. Towards the end of the night, I told one friend to use my parents' bed. I suggested this other girl could use my bed and that I'd just sleep on the living room floor. Another friend was already passed out on the couch. About 5 minutes later, the girl came out and asked me to sleep in my room because new places made her uncomfortable. I agreed, went in, and plopped down on the floor. As soon as I did, she said I can sleep in my bed with her. I told her the floor is fine, but she kept insisting, so finally I hopped into bed. I was shifting around and complaining that my back was sunburned. She offered to rub aloe on it. I told her it would be fine, but she demanded to. So there I was, half naked, and it felt amazing. She finished, I thanked her, and then I drifted off to sleep. It wasn't until I recounted that story to my friend the next day that I fully grasped what had actually been happening. We ended up dating for a bit, and I finally experienced intimacy for the first time, which was pretty cool. But then she turned out to be crazy and immature. History 12. I was waiting at her place, just the two of us, until my mom got home from work. I'd forgotten my house key and couldn't get inside. She was the only one kind enough to let me wait. My crush with her shapely figure, oh my god, yes, and lovely brown hair and eyes, was lying on her side on her bed. I had a clear view of her form, and her hands were tucked between her thighs. I pointed out her hand placement, mentioning I do the same to warm my hands. She laughs and replies, "Oh, well, yeah, it is nice and warm down there." After that, she smiles with a very inviting look in her big brown eyes, which were half closed. She then subtly adjusts her position and she even bites her lip. My heart is reaching infinity with the number of beats, and I am so turned on, I'm forcing myself not to rip off everything and unleash my overwhelming urge to be physically close to her, as if my life depended on it. In doing so, it feels as if my soul is leaving my body, or in other words, I'm nearly fainting. So before turning to stone, I look away and take a deep breath. She notices and takes her hand away in embarrassment and tells me she needs to do homework now. On the way home, the words, "God damn it," is shouting in my head, and I kick the ground on the way home. All because I am so afraid of being gullible.
Thanks for watching. Ever missed a painfully obvious sign like these? Share your most awkward I didn't get it moments in the comments. Let's cringe together.